Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We've got some breaking news out of Cedar Fair, where this week Cedar Fair has revealed their yearly financials for the calendar year of 2018. And Danny,
the apology line starts here.
Starts here because this is exactly what we said was going to happen. That if you go back to our show in August, where we predicted this exact event happening, we said that the first half of the year last year was dismal, and that more likely than not, business started picking up in late July, early August. We said that business would continue into the haunt season, and with the addition of more Winterfest events like at King's Dominion, ultimately we said they would probably be break even or slightly above.
We said they'd come out after the new year and they would say, hey, we were up, 1 or 2%, and it would be because they added a bunch of days at the end of the year in the fourth quarter that, really they had a couple extra parks open this year. They had Winterfest last year at a couple parks. They added it to a few more parks this year. And lo and behold, that's exactly what we learned. So
some numbers for you here. They were, for net revenue, they're up 2% from 2017. For attendance, they're up 1%. Keep in mind, they added the best steel coaster in the world plus 3 other coasters as well, or 2 other coasters. No, 3 other coasters as well on top of that.
And operating days.
Hotels are up 6%. The dream of some people in the company. Hotels up.
That's a good number. That's a good number.
And 9% increase for events like Halloween and Winterfest. 9% increase in net revenue. So overall, I think these are pretty unimpressive numbers. Six Flags has their own problems. Six Flags took a huge dive this week because people don't like their numbers either. That all of their numbers are predicated on the adding of the new parks, and people are seeing through that smoke screen. But here at Cedar Fair, we were spot on.
People aren't seeing through this smoke screen, though.
No.
Everyone's like, well, they're only up 5% because they added parks. Well,
they're only
Cedar Fair's only up 1% because they added days, and they were probably down chain wide over the whole summer.
So I think overall there's some other interesting stuff to come out of this, and I want to break this down step by step, because some very interesting things, I think game-changing things, were said in this presentation. We kind of hinted at them during the volcano show, and I want to really expand upon them and how this changes the philosophy of the company. So one of the things Zimmerman points out is he wants to broaden the guest experience. And when questioned upon this, we got some extra information about that. And this is the key thing here, is he says that near-term, less capital-intensive investments to focus on interactive and immersive family attractions, special events, concerts, and outdoor gathering spaces. So 2 things here. One, it sounds exactly what Cedar Point's doing this year, right? With the Forbidden Frontier. This is that interactive family attraction. That's what that is. And then the special events, obviously Winterfest and Haunt, 9% up. Expand all these events that you're doing in the park. That's another big thing. Also, less capital intensive means not roller coasters is what I'm reading there, right?
Yeah, that I think that's the interpretation that people are going to go to.
And to me, that's a very big shift. Now, I don't know if they're still looking at those long-term investments, but he also says that the existing inventory of thrill rides allows for spacing out larger investments over a longer period of time. So I think we're going to go back to the old, after 2008 days where we might not see a new coaster in a park for many years, 5, 6, maybe even 7 or 8 years. You go back to Maverick in 2007, it wasn't until 2013 that you saw Gatekeeper. So I don't know. Maybe we're not going to be seeing these huge investments. Like this year we saw 4 new coasters in Cedar Fair. Next year we have Copperhead Strike coming out. What else do we have in Cedar Fair?
Yukon Striker.
Yukon Striker at Canada. So you got 2 big investments there. So I wonder if we're going to see a shift in this focus of maybe not investing even in these huge rides anymore.
Yeah.
There's another big thing here. There's another bomb that is dropped in this Q&A session, in this investor call. Consistent spending and updates across the parks on an annual basis provides a greater hedge against weather patterns. That's one of the things. They said their attendance was down because of weather. Here they're saying consistent spending and updates across all the parks. This has not been the philosophy. The philosophy.
No, this is the new part here.
This is the game changer, because the philosophy up until this point, as many people have pointed out over the years, is that Cedar Fair has always kept profits in that park. So if Cedar Point makes money and generates a lot of ticket sales, then that money goes back to investing in Cedar Point. Now keep in mind that ultimately this was always, in practice, but maybe in actual, or maybe in policy, but not in actual practice, we know that profits were shared across the parks. I know for a fact that there are big meetings at Cedar Fair in December where they would divvy up the rest of the money so that parks would get investments even if they didn't see huge increases in attendance. You had to fight for that money. Park presidents and park managers would have to fight for that money, but money was shared across the chain. So that has always happened. But here, it sounds like they want to do that even more so, that they don't want weather patterns at Cedar Point to determine the whole year. That makes sense, right? Because you can't put all your eggs in one basket. You have a chain of all these different parks. Why not start investing in some of them? And will we see now maybe those investments in the Worlds of Fun, in the Dorney parks? I don't know. I don't know if that's what this means. But it does say that they're going to start investing into other places because they can't have just a few parks be dependent upon the whole success of the entire chain. That's a huge departure from how things in theory were said to be done in the past.
Right. Well, and this is something that we talked about back, in August, but then also when, last year when we heard about what parks were going to be focused on in terms of the investments. And, clearly year one or, last, or whatever it is, the last couple years of focusing on additions at just 3 or 4 parks does not seem to be working out the way that they had hoped. We talked about Kings Island is the big one that we've talked about, how the big investments, the recent big investments with Banshee and Mystic Timbers have not brought people through the gates. Banshee was a 1% increase. Actually, I think it was a little bit less than that. Mystic Timbers was roughly a 1% increase with Winterfest added. So, there's a lot of different things at play there. And it seems as if they are catching on to what we were alluding to, over a year ago, that, hey, the big parks that are most popular and get the most visitors are starting to saturate out a little bit, and to really get to increase the revenue. The hotels are a good business decision. You're gonna make money off the hotels. That's why they're doing it at Carowinds. That's why they're talking about doing it at Canada's Wonderland. The hotels are gonna bring in money to the chain. Nobody's arguing that. In terms of the theme park guest experience and getting new rides, that's not what we want to see as the enthusiasts, because we want to ride rides. We want new rides. But from a business perspective, the hotels are a good move. And the 6% increase in hotel spending, I think you said it was, is a great indication of that. And that's something they should continue to do. But in terms of investing in their parks, one thing that does not seem to be working is investing in the same parks year after year after year. So maybe Copperhead Strike, Carowinds has done well. Intimidator, they did very well. Fury, they did very well. If Copperhead Strike seems to do well next year, then maybe you'll continue to see investments going at Carowinds. Banshee did not do well for Kings Island. Mystic Timbers did not do well for Kings Island. Taking out Firehawk, if you're putting in a $30 million B&M, seems like a questionable move.
It's still befuddling to me why Kings Island would even consider putting in a Giga. And I just don't think that, people talk about the good old days of Kings Island and how there is millions more people there, but that was also in the good old days when there weren't parks all over the place. that Six Flags wasn't as prominent. Six Flags is such a prominent thing. If you want to go to a theme park, you can find a Six Flags anywhere. And Kings Island used to be like a really unique attraction that families would go to. And I don't know if they have that feel. Yeah, they have a wonderful kids area. They have wonderful rides. But can't you just get that anywhere now? Like, I don't think the novelty of Kings Island is what it used to be. So I think you have to rely on that Cincinnati market. And I don't know if there's an extra million people in Cincinnati that you're going to get through the gate of Kings Island. And I don't know if there's a million people outside of Cincinnati, they're going to travel to Cincinnati. The infrastructure, if any place needs a hotel, it's them, because the infrastructure is so poor. The hotels are so bad around there. Like, they need something that has some bit of quality there if they want to make it into a resort. And I don't think it's a 2-day park to begin with. I think it's easily done in 1 day and accomplished. And even with a Giga, I don't think that changes that equation for me. So that's still befuddling to me. Another thing they say is smaller investments foster more nimble decisions based on changing consumer tastes and demands. Once again, to me, it's screaming, why are we putting in $30 million roller coasters? Six Flags is putting in, $10 million roller coasters, glorified carnival rides and Larson loops and all this other junk. Even though the Larson loops for the most part do count as coaster credits. They're putting in all this other junk, but they're still doing well. They're still doing, attendance-wise, they're not down. They could be slightly down, but they're not any worse shape than what Cedar Fair's in right now. And they're spending half as much money,
Well, yeah, and that's a big thing here. And we've talked about this and I'm biased towards Dorney Park, but Dorney Park is in arguably the most competitive theme park market outside of Central Florida and Southern California, because you've got all your major players. You've got Six Flags out there in Jersey. You've got, Busch Gardens is kind of far away, but you've got Sesame Place, which is a very good kids and family park. So you've got the Busch parks in there. You've got the independent parks like your Knoebels. You've got Kennywood not far away. You've got Hershey Park, your big corporate, separate corporate entity there. You've got a lot of different things. And you know what? It's not getting any better, because an hour and a half away, right outside of New York City, you've got the American Dream and Nickelodeon Universe opening up in another year. This year. So your competition is getting stiffer, and yet Dorney Park has not had anything. And in fact, they've taken out rides now. Dorney Park seems like the obvious one for maybe not the most growth, but the most potential to take guests from the competition and bring them to your park. And, Worlds of Fun is another one. Worlds of Fun doesn't have nearly the competition, but it has a very wide reach because there is not a lot of competition there. You can pull people in from farther away. You can pull people in from 3 or 4 hours away, maybe, to a park like Worlds of Fun. Great America, I think that's a huge market up there that you can draw from. And I think Great America is a good example of what they should be doing at the other parks like Dorney, Worlds of Fun, and maybe a Valley Fair, where let's put in a smaller investment, $8, $10, $12 million, like a Railblazer. Let's see what happens. If we can get a 1 or 2% increase, then maybe you go for that big home run and you go for the $25 million B&M, and then you see what happens. Or in the case of Dorney, maybe you go for an $8 or $9 million GCI wooden coaster. If you only get a 1 or 2% increase, it's not the end of the world. $8 or $9 million is not breaking the bank for Cedar Fair. And if you still get that attendance number up a little bit, then maybe that's an indication that, hey, if we double the investment, maybe we can double our returns, because we haven't invested in these parks majorly in the last decade. So we've probably, could probably draw in a fair bit of new guests with a big new attraction.
Plus, you might be able to hit the double whammy and put in a new ride and get good weather. If someone else doesn't get good weather, once again, looking what they're trying, what I'm reading on the page here, and trying to, even out and make sure that one area isn't completely dependent upon your entire success for the season.
Right.
Some other things that they're mentioning here, just the things that we've already said, all the things that they're going to focus on. Things like hotels are mentioned highly in here. Things like sports parks, that obviously the Cedar Point Sports Park, Sports Force Park has been outstanding for Cedar Point, bringing people in during parts of the season that don't normally have people there. Like I said, the hotels, the sports facilities. But here's the other thing too, is broaden our entertainment offerings through immersive limited time events for strong appeal for Gen Xers and young adults. This brew and barbecue stuff, I'll tell you what, when I went to Kaga, place was a ghost town, Danny. The only place that had people in it was the brew and barbecue area. That there was lines, there were people there spending money. Now, to me, I don't think that's not a long-term play for me, because I live in a big city. So I can go down to downtown Chicago, go to any of the suburbs here in Chicago, and I can find a food festival, a barbecue festival, and I don't have to pay a $75 entrance fee to get in.
Yep. Absolutely.
So to me, I think that's a fun thing to bring people in, maybe bring pass holders in. They do talk about increasing the pass holder experience, getting pass holders in to spend a few extra bucks. But I don't know if that's actually enticing more people. Maybe, but you also need that ride aspect too, because you have to justify the cost of walking through the gate, and then you give them the added experience of the event. So it makes it feel more full. Why Haunt is so successful. Why Winterfest is successful. We haven't really heard a whole lot of numbers out of some of the parks that have been doing it for a while now. But we know Haunt, they're running all the rides. They're running the haunts. It feels like you get double for the same price of the ticket. And I think that's where you have to look at these brew and barbecue things as well, is trying to see how can we increase the value of that everyday ticket for the regular person walking in. And that's the challenge. And that's what they're going to be focusing on, it looks like. Events, hotels, sports areas, other things other than rides. Rides seem, in this estimation, from what I'm reading here, seems to be on the back burner for the most part. So for me, that's upsetting, because I go to parks for rides. I don't go to parks for food events. If I want a food event, like I said, I can go to downtown Chicago any weekend and go to Grant Park and find a great food event going on. There are millions of food events. There's millions of concerts and free concerts and all this other garbage. I go to haunts because that's a unique experience. There's a lot of haunts in Chicago, but you got to pay a lot of money. You can't go through 6 haunts in one day and expect to not be broke afterwards in Chicago. So that's a unique experience. I like the Winterfest idea. I did it at Great America. I don't think it's something I would travel for, but ultimately, I enjoyed the experience.
Ultimately, the holiday events, generally, unless you're going to like Florida or California or Texas, generally those are for the locals, because you're not going to have people travel hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and even get on airplanes to go to a theme park where most of the roller coasters are not operating. Certainly not people like us. So
maybe that's going to change too, because maybe they look at these events and they see haunts big. Maybe they look at Winterfest and say, you know what? The part of the season that doesn't matter is the part of the season from, that spring break that they always talk about. In Orlando, spring break's a big thing, but is it really a big thing at all these other parks? Should they really be racing to get these coasters open for, March and April? It seems to me it would make more sense is find a way to open them for November and December and find a way to increase that attendance, because the attendance in March and April is pretty dismal anyway. So find a way to get those events up and maybe start investing in rides. Hey, Great America, Six Flags Great America had half their rides open. All the B&Ms were open for Winterfest. I was riding Raging Bull and Superman in in freezing weather. It's 32 degrees.
That's pretty cool.
You can do it, so it's not impossible, despite what people have said over the years. Oh, well, they can't run in this and they can't run in that. Well, Great America has run them in all that, so it can be done. Now, is it healthy for the ride? Who the hell knows? I'm not an engineer. You are. But they were doing it. But, once again, those are the events that they have to focus on. That's what this, and this isn't me making it up. This is me reading what's on the page here, what they said, what Zimmerman said in the conference call in this report, that these are what the things that they are focusing on. And that's what I'm going to go on here. And for me, a little disappointing, not surprising since we said this was going to happen, despite everyone lining up to defend Cedar Fair and how everything's still, clouds and glorious and sunny days. Not so much that they're changing a whole lot here. This is a game changer. This is a game-changing event here because we're now focusing on other things and openly, possibly focusing on other parks as well, which I think might be the one highlight here. One saving grace.
I mean, if we start seeing rides at Worlds of Fun, Dorney Park, Valley Fair, Michigan's Adventure, God forbid, I mean, there's a lot of interesting things going on here. This is most certainly in the last, since we've been doing Uncut and the YouTube stuff here for the last 5 years, this is most certainly the biggest, I think the biggest decision point for Cedar Fair since we've been doing videos here the last, 4 or 5 years. This is an inflection point. This is a critical business point and also a critical point in terms of what direction they go in for the guest experience and how they're going to improve the guest experience, continue to improve the guest experience at their parks while still making money and making good business decisions.
Yeah.
Because the guest experience under Kinzel was always very strong. That was one thing that Kinzel always prided himself on. And the last 5, 6, 7 years, Matt Ouimet and now Zimmerman, generally for stockholders, for shareholders, has brought in money. The stock has performed well. We're not debating that here. The shareholders have been pleased with the numbers that are coming back. We're at a point now where, in order to get the stock performing well, in order to keep that ball rolling, you're going to need to continue to improve the guest experience to keep people coming through the gates. It's become clear that just adding a new ride is not going to be enough moving forward. At least for Cedar Fair, adding the new rides is not doing the trick. So,
and if you just
they're not going to
real quick, you can see the last 2 years for Cedar Fair, way down the last 2 years. So this is something that they got, and they've been posting record this, record that, but not record stock prices, as you can see here. So
so they're at a point where they need to change their game plan and change their approach because they need the stock to do well. And they need to improve the guest experience because I'll tell you right now, King's Dominion's on my list every year to visit. I took it off my list. I don't really care if I go to King's Dominion this year. I rode Twisted Timbers a lot last year. I ride Intimidator 305, ride Dominator. But without Volcano there, that is a big reason to visit King's Dominion off my list. So you'll probably get one less visit from me at least. In 2019, I'd like to go to Carowinds. I'll go to Dorney Park. I'll go to Canada's Wonderland for sure. Outside of that, I don't know how many Cedar Fair parks I'm going to go to. I don't know if I have a reason to go to any others other than that. Maybe I'll go to Cedar Point. We'll see how it works out. But you need to continue to improve the guest experience and build new rides.
And maybe that, because they also talked about a loyalty reward program in there too, something that Six Flags did with their passes.
Yeah.
Which intrigues me because I feel that a lot of people look down on pass holders for Cedar Fair, and I don't feel like I'm part of that group. I'm not part of the group that goes to the park, has 2 meals, gets the free parking, rides the rides, and then goes home. That's not me. I go to the park, I buy a hotel room most of the time right off the bat. If I'm at Cedar Point, usually from Cedar Point at one of the Breakers hotels. I go there, I'm dropping money on various T-shirts throughout the day, T-shirts, merchandise, every time I go, I'm probably dropping $100 on that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I also I have the meal plan, yes, but I also buy extras as well. Elephant ears, cheese on a stick. So I don't feel like I'm the typical pass holder, but I feel as if I've been treated like the typical pass holder.
Yeah.
And maybe this loyalty reward program for buying shirts and having to pay, the Cedar Fair upcharge of, $26 a shirt, maybe eventually that will lead to me saving some down the road and rewarding people like me and possibly you. I know you like to, eat at wonderful restaurants like Mellow Mushroom.
Wow.
I'd much rather eat in the park than at that junky place. But hopefully the loyalty reward program that they mentioned increases, my willingness to go. And I think I've said in the past, I've been very critical of Fastlane, but maybe it leads to me getting a Fastlane wristband here or there, or getting a free t-shirt here or there, or getting an extra meal here or there, or getting something on top of for spending all this extra money at the park consistently over the last, how many years have I can't even count anymore. The money I've given to Cedar Point is ridiculous. I probably built Gatekeeper.
Well, yeah. And, that's going to have to be the move going forward, because it seems pretty clear that what they're doing is not going to work much longer. And
no, and I said, if I'm sitting here right now contemplating if I really need a platinum pass. Do I really need a platinum pass? Because I'm paying $180. I'm not feeling like I get the real value. Do I really?
I've been thinking about mine for next year. I mean, I've had a platinum pass as long as I can remember.
And the problem is you need to entice me to keep buying into that system. That before it was just like assumed that people would just renew their passes. And you giving me a stupid Fastlane pass that legitimately I didn't even use because, during haunt season, because you can only use it on a Friday or Sunday, both days that you would have at Cedar Point, zero need for a Fastlane pass.
Yeah, exactly.
Like zero need for that at Cedar Point on Friday or Saturday or Sunday during haunt. That doesn't entice me at all. That you can throw that away and put it right next to, useless rewards. So you need to entice me. $180. Hey, Six Flags did it. I'm paying $225. I'm a Diamond Elite member. Because the perks were just too much for me to pass up. Getting 50% off of everything. Getting all these extra, skip the line passes every time I go. You are overloading it, and now you do a rewards program on top of that stuff. You are overloading me with stuff, and I'm looking at the Cedar Fair Platinum Pass saying, well, I'm paying just as much, and I'm not getting half of the stuff that I'm getting at Six Flags. So I think they really need to step up their game in that respect and stop taking pass holders for granted, because the stuff that they're giving us, the drink program, the food program, everyone's doing that now. So you really need to step up your game, I think, a little bit.
Yeah. Like, I think you're spot on there. And, like I said, this is a critical inflection point in where Cedar Fair is headed. And they are going to have to change their game plan if they are going to continue to have strong performances like they've had in recent years that they are starting to not have.
Yeah.
This is a critical point for Cedar Fair, and they have some very, very important decisions to make from a guest experience standpoint and a business standpoint.
Absolutely. So we will keep you updated on all the latest going on. Oh, an exciting week here. And it doesn't seem like it's going to stop. We're going to keep getting stuff, aren't we?
It's warming up. The snow's melting, Andy. We're going to be at the park soon, hopefully.
Really. So, as always, thanks for joining us here on COASTER-net Update. I'm, of course, Andy Barchek from Chicago, Illinois.
Danny Miller, Binghamton, New York.
Right on, right, Warriors.
Thanks, guys. See you next time.